This episode was actually brought to you by luxmarket.com. Welcome back, Second Floor listeners. It's your co-host here, Kenny Buller, on the Second Floor podcast. This is where we talk about how to survive, how to thrive, and keep the good vibes going in both life and business. On today's episode, I bring to you the one and only Mannat Kahlon Gill. Mannat happens to juggle multiple different passion projects along with multiple different careers all at the same time. But what I love about the three careers in which Mannat juggles is all of them encompass marketing in its truest form. For those of you who know me, your host, quite well, I'm a huge advocate and huge marketing enthusiast. So this guest and this episode I'm actually super excited to bring to you. Mannat happens to be the marketing manager of West Edmonton Mall, North America's one of the biggest malls in the world, the biggest mall in North America. Also, number 2, Mannat runs her own fashion label company called Mannat Mode. Mannat Mode showcases South Asian fashion wear catered to women all around the world who appreciate and love South Asian Indian wear, and she has this catered to the global audience. Number 3, Mannat is also a university professor at MacEwan University, currently teaching international marketing. In this episode, we talk about what makes Mannat Mannat. We talk about her passion project she's doing. We talk about her career, and we talked about what marketing should look and feel like in today's world going into 2020. Without further ado, let's dive in and let's hear from Mannat Kahlon Gill herself. Welcome back to the Second Floor podcast, everybody. I'm here with my co-host Omid, and we have the lovely Mannat Kahlon Gill. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for having me.
Mannat, I want us to talk a little bit about marketing today and how you're able to balance this career path in which you've chosen through all of the certain things you're doing with it that you have a passion for.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we actually start with a little bit about your fashion label.
Sure.
And how and where Mannat Mode came into fruition and where it's kind of at right now since you started.
Sure. Mannat Mode is a total passion project. So it started off as a blog, actually, quite a number of years ago now. I was just really into fashion. I thought I should do something more productive with my spare time instead of just watching Netflix, to be honest. I had a cool corporate marketing job. I just wanted a creative outlet, I guess. So I started just documenting my everyday outfits. That turned into collaborating with a lot of creatives in the city. So photographers, makeup artists, hair people. And really building a really nice community on the blog itself. And then I moved to San Francisco to do my master's in international marketing and decided to continue on over there. So that was a great way to meet new people as well. There's tons of people into fashion and just the creative industries in general in San Fran as well. So it continued on over there. I was kind of too busy with school to give it a lot of time and attention. But once I moved back to Edmonton and the dust kind of settled, I was into the job that I wanted. I just decided to, just take a chance on my passions and make it something more, just so I could devote more time to it. I just noticed, I would come after full days of work, but anytime I was working on my blog or thinking about designing outfits even for myself, I was never tired. I would just never feel the fatigue of my, 8-hour corporate marketing day when I was working on this business. So I just made a business plan, came up with some capital, obviously myself, just saving up from my job, gave it about 6 months and really, really was strict about no shopping, no trips and things like that, and kind of saved up enough to get it started off the ground. So initially my manufacturing was actually based out of India and my brother lives there, so he helped me kind of coordinate a lot of it. But I found that clients here wanted a faster turnaround. So that's where I really thought where my forte was. Obviously, I was bringing a younger kind of sensibility towards Indian clothes that isn't readily available in Edmonton. So that's a gap that I found that I could probably strike in. And then the other thing was turnaround. So now actually all my manufacturing is based in Edmonton. I'm able to kind of turn outfits around in 3 or 4 weeks from scratch. So
Wow,
yeah, that's how it got started.
I find that it's really unique how you originally started it out as a blog, and it was essentially a form of expressing yourself.
Yes.
Which then turned into your love for fashion, obviously, and
Yep.
it being a lot of Indian apparel and clothes that you must have worn and appreciated since your whole life. And I want to know if you knew since you started the blog that eventually it will be turning into something related to fashions, or if that kind of struck a chord and you realize that, okay, now that I built enough audience and I built this rep with my blog, I can now turn it into fashion. So I'm wondering how that kind of turned into that in the transition of things.
It was an evolution for sure. I think at the time when I started my blog, it was probably about a decade ago now. A lot of people were doing that. It wasn't that out of the blue that I had a blog on Instagram where I was kind of chronicling my daily outfits. But I really found that my interest was towards Indian clothes. So I would kind of blog my everyday outfits, and that was really fun. But anytime I had to feature an Indian outfit, I found myself giving it more attention and enjoying it a lot more. So it kind of stemmed from that, and realizing and recognizing that, oh, I'm really into like the Indian fashion part of it. It's not just any kind of fashion. So once I kind of recognized that, and then that coupled with, again, just I'm in marketing, so I do a lot of market research in general. And so when I started looking into fashion and what the options are in the Edmonton market, there was actually a gap in the market that I found. So it's kind of like this very passionate, burning desire of always wanting to do Indian fashion, and then recognizing a tangible need, and the marriage of that then really it becoming a business idea. Because I think a lot of times you can have really good ideas, but if the market isn't ready for it, or if your market is already saturated, those ideas never really take off. So I think it's taking a passion of yours and then doing industry and market research and realizing, is there a need for what you have to offer? And then really taking the next step and being, it's great to follow your heart and all those things, but you do need to be a bit calculated when it comes to business. So it was an evolution, and it was kind of connecting the dots. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
And I find that with Indian fashion lately, it's starting to become slowly but surely more mainstream.
Yes.
And especially with, as you've probably seen over the past years, you have certain individuals in Los Angeles wearing a turban. And they're really adding it to their wardrobe.
Yeah.
And I want to know if you feel like, especially with your clothing, especially with what you're wearing today, which is Mannat Mode. It looks fantastic.
Thank you.
I want to know if you are on the path with your own brand to eventually turn it into everyday wear. Yeah. As opposed to just being something that aunties wear and all the people wish to wear.
We love our aunties. Right? Aunties are great.
Yeah, we give all the respect in the world to the aunties.
Yes.
But I want to know if that's your game plan, if you're on the trajectory of turning it into more everyday modern wear. Yeah,
absolutely. I think like even what I'm wearing today, it's it can swing both ways. I'd wear this to a music festival, or I would add a little tikka or earrings and wear it to someone's Indian reception, right? So I think diversity and inclusion in general is such a huge topic right now, and you see that in editorials, you see it in fashion campaigns, you see it in big brands, even like Louis Vuitton, that are making sure that there is a representation. We live in a global world, and I don't think that's too far-fetched and too far off. I don't know if that's the driving force for me. I do think globalization is a reality though, and obviously I'm from India, but I live in Canada, and we're such a multicultural society that if you see someone wearing Indian clothes in the grocery store or on the street, I think no matter what culture you are, it's not like someone's jarred and saying, oh my God, like what is this? We live in a society where we're lucky to live in Canada, where everyone's so accepting, and it's a melting pot and a hotbed of all these cultures, and it's so great we can get influenced by each other. And so I feel like all types of cultural dressing is in vogue. So
I love it. See, after you said that, I have that much more confidence now to start wearing my kurta pajamas.
There you go. There you go.
When I was contracted on the marketing team at TELUS, and I remember the first day I wore it during a big multicultural hurrah that we did in the office. I wore it, and to be honest, I remember making that decision with myself in the morning.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like, you know, I'm going to have to wear this and I'm going to have to make sure I put my pride on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's going to be that much more people looking because they're going to be, obviously, they're going to see how it's so much different from what everyone else is wearing.
Yes.
But I feel like it's neat with fashion, to your point, about how it's going to be very unique and different, but so long as you yourself feel confident wearing it, then it will definitely show.
That's huge. That's huge.
Right?
I feel like fashion is a great way to represent your identity. And as you said, you need to wear your kurta with pride, right? Yeah. And yeah, I'm very proud of where I'm from and what my cultural background is, what my upbringing has been. And that's a huge reason as to why I started this label. And moving here from a different country at the age of 11, you know, you're in this flux period where it could have kind of gone either way. Either you assimilate into the mainstream to such an extent where it's not cool to be Indian anymore, or it's really holding on to your roots and holding on to what makes you you and what makes you unique and being proud of that, and still understanding that you are in a different context. So maybe the way you conduct yourself is a little bit different than where, you know, in your own country. But at the same time, I don't think there's a need to kind of shed everything from back home to try to be cool in this mainstream society. And it's really funny. It's when I moved here, it was 2001. It was actually 10 days after 9/11, which was really scary to fly with my entire family after such a big devastating world event. Yeah. And at that time, you know, it wasn't really cool to speak in your own language here. A lot of my friends are still from, you know, my first day in school here. I went to DS Mackenzie, so it was a very, you know, multicultural school. Most of my friends from there are from different cultures. They're Caucasian, they're Chinese. Actually, DS Mackenzie didn't have a lot of Indian students. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was kind of assimilating into mainstream culture and things like that. But I really found it was your own Indian personal network were the ones that were doing the labeling. And I was lucky. I don't think I was bullied by any means. Mm-hmm. But I think there was a bit of an undercurrent of she's from India. And, you know, if I'm talking to my mom all of a sudden from English, like I knew English when I came here, but, you know, I would obviously sometimes switch into Hindi or switch into Punjabi or something like that. And there would be like a look, or you would see other kids kind of be like, oh, she knows that language. Yeah. And it's so funny how far we've come, because now it's really cool to know multiple languages. Yeah. And I find it's the same people that, you know, when you're younger, you don't know any better. So it's not like I blame them by any means, but even in your personal network, it's those same kids that were kind of making fun of me for loving Rajma Chawal instead of a burger, or, you know, making fun of me for being too Indian or having an accent at a young age or whatever that it was. Now they're proud to be Indian because, again, because of diversity and inclusion, globalization, it's really cool to know multiple languages. It's really cool to have an ethnic background. All that stuff wasn't cool back then. So I feel like for like a young girl trying to make my way in this new country, my parents have like a huge role to play in making me comfortable in my own skin. And that over the years has just built up to a point where I'm like, I'm proud enough of this culture that yes, I'm going to start a fashion label and it's going to be Indian and represent. And
infuse both the worlds in which you love.
Yes.
You know, from here in the West Coast all the way to India.
Yeah.
Together.
And I mean, now that I look at, I'm about to turn 30 in a couple months. Can't believe I just said that on camera. But I've lived more of my life in Canada now than I did in India, obviously. But yeah, I feel like Mannat Mode represents me in that sense, and so many other people in Canada, in and around the world, where you have influences from two cultures, you have influences from two societies. I consider Canada home, and Edmonton is my hometown. That is what I list as my hometown. But there's a very strong, again, rooted pride that comes from your culture, and I think it's important to be proud of where you're from.
Absolutely, yeah. And to your point about that, I wanted to resonate with you on that. Before I share, I want to ask if Omid wants to elaborate on that feeling of, you know, when you're growing up as a kid and you share your own insights, even if it's through your own language and other people see it, it's foreign to them.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's also due to how much you take influence from other people and the society you're in, right? So when you come from a different country, you see all these people and they're kind of giving you that look, right? They're giving you that look, and you can either be influenced by that and say, you know what, I'm just gonna hide this and throw it under the rug and not be prideful of where I'm from, or you do what you did and continue having those strong roots. And some people just need reminders, right? I know a lot of friends, a lot of family who have essentially become whitewashed in a sense, and anything you do culturally, they kind of give you that judgment or whatever the case. But I feel like sometimes those people just need to be reminded of where they came from, and be prideful and wear it on your sleeve, you know?
Right.
So,
yeah, absolutely. I knew Omid would be the bridge for me to say what I wanted to say because it's such an eye-opener for what you just said. Because for me, I'm born in Edmonton.
Right.
And my world in my household was far different from the reality in which I saw in a very white neighborhood, me being probably one of the 2 brown kids in the school.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I almost needed to flick that Indian switch off.
Right.
And be like, okay, now I'm in school.
Right.
I got to do whatever I can
Yeah.
to fit in,
Yeah.
to make friends and be just like them. It was always about trying to fit in for me.
Yeah.
And then it was only until I was around 18 where I started to feel like you. And I was like, you know what? Wow. Like, it was the 3rd time I went to India. First time I'd say as like a young adult,
Yeah.
where I got to really appreciate it for what it was culturally.
Right.
And I realized that I grew up so rebellious to my bougies, my aunts, and even my parents,
Yeah.
saying, oh, I'm just going to get by saying Hanji, 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 yes, yes, yes. And I would get by. And
Yeah.
when you're so young, your
Yeah.
relatives just think it's cute. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, let him go play, whatever.
Yeah.
He has no idea what we're saying,
Yeah.
right? They laugh it off.
Yeah.
And when I was 18, I realized that, okay, wow, my grandparents are getting older. I'm only going to be able to get to know them so much if I don't decide to really know where I came from. So it was at that time where on that trip, I said to my relatives, I said, listen, I'm going to make multiple mistakes. I'm going to mess it up so many times. But my first indication of me trying on getting to know my culture is speaking the language.
Yeah.
And I always said, and I always kind of ignored it, that they realized I would really mess up on words, but they never corrected me.
Yeah.
Because my family and my immediate family would always feel like, oh, he's gonna get sensitive if we tell him that he's not saying it right. So I addressed it, and then the mistakes I made was like endless. Yeah. But then every mistake I made, and when it would get corrected in the language, it was that much quicker for me to pick up on it.
Right.
And the beautiful part is 6-8 months into it, I got to sit down with my grandma like this. Yeah. And we had a genuine conversation. Yeah. She got to learn a little bit about me. I got to learn about her.
So beautiful.
And I would ask my mom, I'd be like, Mom, can you translate a little bit? But beforehand, I'd ignore it because I felt like I was more into the Western world. Yes. So it's so great for someone like you to say that, I'm sure you never stopped it and you turned it into something.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an evolution, right? So it's not like at 11 years old, I was super evolved and I just knew this. It's over time. It's when you realize, oh, I think by trying to assimilate or mainstream so hard that I'm losing a little bit of myself. And what is that little bit? And then being conscious about it so that you can stop it. And I think traveling has a lot to do with it too. I mean, everyone kind of, the world is your oyster and everyone takes vacations and things like that. But I really find if you're not comfortable with who you are and if you don't know who you are, it's really hard to take in any other culture and enjoy it to the fullest. How are you going to go into Thailand and try to really immerse yourself in that experience when you're like, who am I? Yeah. Like, what do I stand for? And so I really found that once I had that acceptance, thankfully, while I was still a teenager, of, this is me and whoever has a problem with it doesn't need to be in my circle. Surround yourself with people who are encouraging. And I have to say, actually, out of everybody else when I was a teenager, it was my Caucasian friends and my Chinese friends who I met on day one of school in Canada are the ones that really stuck by me and loved me for who I am, and not my personal network of people who I thought would be the ones to rally and, because they understood the cultural context. They were Indian themselves, that they would get the struggle. They didn't, because again, they were born here and didn't have the same experience as I did. but yeah, somehow I found it was those day one friends that really gave me the encouragement to kind of be myself, and not by doing anything active, being like, oh, like it's okay if you're this way. It was just so normal. That's just who you are. They were just so accepting from day one that that's just how it kind of rolled on. I never had to do any explaining. But I found that when I started then traveling late into my teenager years and like early into my 20s, that I was able to go into other cultures and really immerse myself in a more authentic way than just taking it in kind of superficially. So I did a stint in Thailand. I lived there for 4 months doing an internship when I was 17. And yeah, I really found that they loved that I was Indian and I was myself, and I loved that they were Thai, and we all had something to learn from each other. So yeah, I feel like it just adds to your quality of life and what you get out of everything once you're comfortable with yourself. Yeah.
It's really neat culturally how the question becomes, it doesn't become, oh, why do they do this? It just becomes, okay, this is how they do it.
Yes.
And this is how I need to accept it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not you trying to be curious as to, oh, why do they pray at this time? Or why do they walk instead of, going into a car? Something that's not highly religious, but just the way it works in their society.
Yeah.
You don't question why, it's just how they do things.
Yeah, and you have to be open to it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, when you've lived here your entire life, you have this sense of the world, right? So going somewhere else or traveling and seeing something that's completely different, which is normal to those people that live there, that's like a shock to the system.
Yeah.
So either you take it and accept it and be open to it and let those whatever they do, in that society to be like, okay, this is what they do. I accept it, and they accept who I am and where I come from. But a lot of people here, they don't do that. They have this bubble. I come from, I've lived majority of my life in St. Albert. There's a bubble there. People don't travel to India or go to different societies, right? So they have a view of the world that's just theirs.
Yeah.
So anything that's outside of that, such as us, like people that are different skin colors, different cultures, you go in there and they're shocked. What is this? What are they doing? Why are they doing that? Why do they have that on their head? Why are they wearing this? So if you as a person, like you said, if you're not comfortable with yourself, you have those insecurities, but also you're not open, you can't do much.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of these big cities that are huge creative cultural hubs, when you think about it, when you think about a San Fran or you think about a New York, they're a melting pot of cultures, and it's people who are very open to accepting and interacting with people with different backgrounds and different cultures, right? So I feel like the more traveling that happens, the more Edmonton even becomes globalized, and there's more and more kind of creative hunger here, that there's immense potential in that. But again, you have to be open to accepting all that.
Yeah, that's what it is. And don't get me wrong, there are some people who definitely are, which is nice to see that in Edmonton and the surrounding bedroom communities. Right?
For sure.
I wanted to ask, because we're still on the topic of culture and fashion in a sense, is has there ever been anyone throughout your journey, Mannat, let's say, that has motivated you, influenced you to kind of spearhead your love for fashion and turning this into Mannat Mode?
Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of different influences. I think everybody is kind of amalgamation of all your physical environments that you're surrounded by, the people that you're surrounded by. I would say taking the step into business was, I think, my innate confidence just coming out. But when you talk about people, I think they have a lot to do with getting me to that point of really then taking the leap and being confident enough to kind of fly. So obviously your parents are your biggest influence. Like my dad literally thinks I can do nothing wrong. He thinks whatever I touch turns into gold. Awesome. And so from that, I really got a lot of self-confidence. So I had somebody telling me that I'm the best thing that's ever happened to him, ever happened to the world, ever happened to the universe. So, as a kid, everyone around kind of would be like, okay, like, I think this is too much. Like, she's going to go a little bit crazy.
Yeah, she's going to do anything.
Yeah, she's a little bit too spoiled, but really hearing that affirmation, that positive affirmation every single day really did instill immense confidence in me. So again, whether I was adjusting from one country to the next, or even if it was, regular things, going from junior high to high school, going from high school to university, anytime I had an adjustment period, I feel like I was able to tackle it again because of everything my dad had instilled in me. He's like, everything you need is inside of you. You are the best thing ever. So I really sometimes tapped into that, even though I knew he's totally skewed in his view of me. I think it did instill that silent confidence that came out at the right time. I never really acted on or banked on that as I was growing up. But I think once I, had the education, once I thought I had a really good idea, it was really that confidence that then he was like, you know what? He thinks you can do anything in this world. Just go. Just try it. And then obviously my mom as well. So my mom's a painter. She's an HR professional by day, but I've watched her do oil paintings kind of my entire life. So regardless of, again, whatever country we were in, like I just know a house that has canvases up on easels all around, and she's working on one idea or the other. I draw stick people, so I'm actually very bad at sketching for me, for someone who's in fashion. But yeah, I think her paintings, again, art has such a subconscious effect on you. It's so subjective. It's, three people can be looking at a painting and you can get different things from it. So I don't think, again, she ever kind of like shoved the creativity down my throat or was like, here, you hold a paintbrush and you do it too. It's just like watching her do it all my life. I think we always had like a running theme of art in the house just because of that. And just everything in my parents' house, it's painted by her. So I think creatively, I was very inspired by her, and to this date, and just her painting. I want my condo to have paintings that are done by her. So the creativity definitely comes from her. And then the third person I would say would be my husband, who's behind the camera. So it's a little bit hard. Baby, it's a little bit hard talking about him as he's here, but. Yeah, I was so spoiled by my dad that I really didn't think I would find somebody who would think I'm this like epitome of do whatever you want, and that you are the best thing in this universe. Yeah. But I found somebody who actually who believed the same thing. So he's much more realistic, which is good. You also need that. But yeah, he's really become my partner in crime in terms of any ideas or not following the cookie cutter quintessential things of what's expected of us. I've been with him since I was 21, so we've pretty much grown up together. And I feel like when it was time to kind of take the next step in our relationship, like going by traditional norms and going by what the right thing to do is, he never fed into all that. It was really, hey, it's me and you against the world. Let's cultivate a life that we are proud of. And even to this day, that's the forefront of all our decision making. It's, whether it's balancing family, balancing work, taking chances, coming up with business ideas, traveling, whatever it is, it's really us trying to like cultivate a world of our own and not following anything. So I feel like those three people for sure have had a huge influence.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just want to appreciate the fact that you could have mentioned anybody, yet you mentioned the three, closest people in your life who, by close, I mean those who you have contact with every day and have clearly had such a huge impact on you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's really beautiful to really hear.
I feel like, there's so many inspirational people around the world. I mean, I could go with Oprah. I could go with Priyanka Chopra. Sure. There's tons of amazing people and there's tons to learn from everybody and what they're doing. And you do on a daily basis, of course, you try to take in everything that you can, but it's so important to be grateful because at the end of the day, if my business were to falter, and it has, as you guys know too, like if you're doing any sort of entrepreneurial things or if you're doing business, like there's always hiccups, there's always bumps. Who's gonna have your back is your husband, your parents, your friends, your family, right? It's not, it's not the Oprahs and the Priyanka Chopras of the world. It is your innate inner circle. So I think it's really important to show that gratitude and be grateful and not take these people for granted. And I think actually getting married and moving out and, living on our own in downtown has brought in a lot of that appreciation, because once you really leave that environment, you really do appreciate it a lot more. I'm sure you understand now as well.
I tell my mom often, I'm like, Mom, I mean, the fact that you did dishes every day and barely complained, like, thank you. And a bunch of other things.
Yes, yes. It's from the littlest things to the day-to-day things to the big picture things, to be like, wow, you guys must have been so tired when, we moved here and you were working 3 jobs and you still took me to my soccer game. Like, this is insane. How did you do this? Meanwhile, we're just trying to not whine about supper every day, working 1 job. So it's, I feel like it's important to be grateful for the people who've always had your back.
I think also those different personalities that you had, those values that you had from all 3-4 different people.
Yeah.
I think those values that they instilled in you or you were influenced by really helped you kind of cultivate where you are right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, depending on their background, having your mother as a creative, and having your father who just instills the ultimate confidence in you.
Yeah.
I think that's super important.
Yes.
And then having your husband as like the backbone and being realistic and being practical, but also supporting you in what you're doing is huge.
Yeah.
So they're all kind of almost different personalities,
for sure,
different values that are instilled.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, actually, my brother moved back to India. He did reverse immigration, which is just unheard of. So he moved here with us initially, and then, was going to MacEwan and doing his undergrad, and he had a huge love for cricket and he was really good. So he played for the Canadian, under 16 team, then played nationally for the Canadian under 18 team. And just decided to pursue it professionally. So I mean, at that time when he moved back about a decade ago, and to this date he still lives in India and he's following his passion. To watch that happen as well, I think in the beginning, when you see your parents struggle with a decision like that, moving to a different country, and then your kid wants to move back, it was tough. It was really tough on the family. And for a long time, I kind of almost became his mom. I would ask the same questions my parents were asking, like, are you being responsible? Like, what's your plan? What's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? And I became that person. But I think over the last couple of years, I really appreciate him being this wildflower and following your passions. And, when you're younger, you're kind of like, okay, this is the right thing to do. Like, this will make mom and dad happy. And this is the path you're supposed to follow. And he was breaking that. So at that point, I was like, you know what? All I see the consequence of that is conflict right now. But in hindsight, now that I think about it, I think about how much harder it is to follow your passion. And that realization only came when I had to do that. And I realized like how much you put on the line for your passion. And it's not easy to cold cut like that and just be like, I'm going to follow my dream. Like, people think, maybe it's irresponsible to do it that way, to not have backup plans, but actually it's really ballsy and it's really hard to do. Yeah. And the majority of the people don't do it because of that reason, because of the fear of the unknown, right? So now it's the same things and the same qualities that I really appreciate in him. And anytime I have a crazy out-of-the-box idea, which I know maybe even these 3 people that I've named will not get, I give him a call in India and I'm like, hey, listen, what do you think of this business plan? Because I know he's just pure heart. He's pure passion. So yeah, I think my brother making the moves that he did too. It took me a while to understand his choices and his decisions, but as I've gotten older, I realize and I value what that ended up subconsciously bringing into my world. Yeah.
Wow, that's so unique.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I'm just thinking right now how beautiful it would be to witness you and all your immediate family members in one room having dinner, and like just to hear how everyone has such a unique like vision and
fireworks.
mentality.
It's fireworks.
I love
sometimes
that.
It's like Diwali fireworks, and sometimes it's the other kind. So
Exactly.
Always exciting though.
And I love how Ovid always, he's my boy. He stole the words right out of me, right? How like your family and all your closest people to you really shape who you are now.
Yeah.
Right, with the confidence and then with the artistic perception.
Yeah.
And before we transition into what you're doing mainly as your career,
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you if there's any fashion icon you do want to recognize right now who's quite the game changer that you see kind of being on the same path as you are, where you're bringing in, you know, a taste of India to the Western world?
Right.
Is there anybody in the world that you kind of want to recognize and that you kind of idolize as well, just for what they're doing work-wise?
Yeah. There's so many Indian designers that are great, but I really think I appreciate the people that can really stick to their vision in a time where you getting influenced by other people and again assimilating is a much more easier and feasible option. And designers who really don't always put the commerce in front of their design sensibilities. And I think that's the reason probably why these designers have lasted so long. So one is Sabyasachi. I was really excited when I got to wear Sabyasachi for my wedding day. It was a dream of mine. So he's built this fashion empire, and he has all through these years stuck to his Indian sensibilities, the Indian handicrafts, the Indian karigari it's called. And that is really commendable, because a lot of the other designers that came at the same time as him really just wanted to commercialize, and they looked at it as a business proposition. So that would start showing in their designs, where they were kind of assimilating to what the trends were. India started getting influenced by the Western world a lot in the last decade, or even in the last 2 decades. And I just find that his label really stuck to the authentic pride of India and the heartland of what Indian fashion and Indian handiwork stands for. Whereas a lot of the other designers, you know, started inculcating a lot of those Western sensibilities into their label, and that's worked for them, and that's great. But he never focused on the commercialization and really stuck to who he was. And to this day is the most, you know, sought after designer in India. So I think it's really cool for somebody to not give into that external pressure and making his brand more commercial, more accessible, more westernized, so to say. That doesn't mean he hasn't changed with the times, because obviously you need to stay relevant in order to be a success as a business. But I still find intrinsically that all his pieces and all his designs really breathe India. Yeah. Which is great. And, you know, he's dressed everyone around the world, pop stars from Europe or Brazil or Shakira's and, you know, the Pussycat Dolls, whatever you name it. But he's made them immerse themselves into the Indian silhouette instead of him trying to change his label for them. Yeah. So that's been really commendable to see. Another designer that really, really inspires me is a designer called Masaba. So she is super young. Actually, when she started, I think her first line came out when she was 19. Wow. And again, she just knew her mind at a very young age. She introduced prints, I would say, in the Indian mainstream ramp fashion culture. So obviously prints have always existed, but she kind of made prints couture. And she has again continued to evolve, but not in one direction. So she's not unilateral, like I'm a designer and this is what I must stick to. She's gone into cosmetics. She's gone on to even design for other fashion brands. And she really branches out in different ways, which I really, really like. And that really makes me believe like I don't need to be boxed in. So any new ideas that are in my mind right now, a lot of them are inspired by watching people like that who are like, okay, just because you're really successful at this one thing doesn't mean you need to stick to it. And I think that's really important, to continue evolving, to continue going into uncharted territories. Just because no one else has done it before doesn't mean you can't do it. So I really appreciate her for that spirit. So I would say Sabyasachi and Masaba are my 2 faves.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Listen, second floor listeners, fans, we have some news for you guys. You shopped around for everyone else. Now it's time to shop for yourself. Get that blazer you've been waiting on, gentlemen. Maybe get a couple of ties to refresh your wardrobe. Or even get a fresh pair of jeans. Whether you're looking for Xenia, Montclair, or Naked and Famous, Lux Market has you covered. With prices 50 to 90% off retail, means that even though you bought for others and the wallet's looking slim, you can afford to splurge on yourself. Head on over to luxmarket.com, that's luxmarket.com, mrkt.com now to shop the finest menswear brands. Available 24 hours a day, shipping anywhere in Canada and the United States of America. Easy shopping, fast shipping, and hassle-free returns. luxmrkt.com.
To your point about Sabyasachi, because I've
Yes.
heard a lot about him, and there's been a lot of raise from him just from what I've seen. Is
Yep.
he, to me, I always like to say he's like the Louis Vuitton of
Yes.
India, right?
Yep.
And at the same time, there's just this royalty, this royal, like, this vibe he gives off in his clothing, which
Yep.
is really neat.
Yep.
And then to your second point about Masaya?
Masaba.
Masaba, okay,
Yep.
there you go. With Masaba, it's neat because you realize that with someone like that, and I'd love to look into more of
Yeah.
her work, is you find that so many times, and I'm sure you heard about this in marketing, is, you know, you segment who your audience is, and then you create this niche profile
Yes.
around who you need to target it
Yep.
to. But then you get someone like her, where she's going to be able to create something for pretty
Yeah.
much anybody and
Yeah.
everybody. Where there's going to be this like this social group that's going to like this specific piece,
Right.
and then there's going to be this other group that's
Yeah.
going to like this piece. So when you could capture that entire market, it becomes a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, and she became really successful and very well known for her prints. So she came out with these custom prints, and anytime you'd see them, you know it's a Masaba. So she had already actually aced that space, and then for her to take a chance on something completely uncharted and go into this other territory, which she really didn't need to do, except for the need for, you know, personal fulfillment and trying to push yourself and yeah, just trying to excel in something else is really inspirational to see. Because usually you see people who are kind of, you know, if you've mastered something, you kind of stick to it and you capitalize on that and you play up your strengths and you just continue building on that. But to see somebody kind of go into uncharted territory, not knowing whether, you know, if you're a success story and then you try something else and it fails, that could technically damage her brand that has become so successful. But her, just being like a risk taker in that way, right? Not worrying about the perceptions and just trying things.
Very
Yeah.
bold. I
Yeah.
love that. I want to transition the conversation now into marketing as a whole and how you fueled your passion and your knowledge and education in marketing to what you're now doing with West Edmonton Mall.
Yeah.
And I want to first of all ask, and I love asking every single marketing enthusiast this, in your perspective, and from how you, let's say, utilize marketing, how would you define what marketing is, especially to, let's say, the audience member that they think they have an idea of it? They're the ones that go, oh, marketing, it's advertising, right? Like that's maybe the first lens they're going to view it in.
Yeah.
And let's say for somebody who is considering marketing as a career or as a chance to get educated in it, how would you define it?
So I would say marketing is basically an amplifier. It's a medium. So you have your product or service that does its functions, and then you have an audience that you think can benefit from it. And what marketing basically does is amplify the value of your product and service to your target market. So it's really a medium or a channel for a company or, again, a product or service to really reach its consumers. So in a nutshell, that's how I would describe it. Now, the way that you can amplify a message is immense, right? So now then you get into traditional media and digital media and advertising and public relations and communications and the marketing mix that you come up with. But essentially, it's an amplifier. It amplifies whatever you want to, as a company, tell your target consumer base.
Yes, absolutely. That's very unique because I love how you mentioned that there's more than one way of doing it.
Yes.
Right? If you're digitally savvy, you do it through digital media.
Yep.
If you're very much so outspoken and conversational, you do it through word of mouth.
Yes.
Right? And then if you're somebody who, let's say you're a blogger and you like to write and that's how you like to articulate information, then you write it in a content-based format. Yeah. Right? And that's just three options.
Right.
But there's an endless number of channels, to your point, about where you could feel that in.
Yeah.
Like for Q Film's perspective, for Omen, he does his, let's say, passion in marketing through creating films for companies. Yeah. Right? So it's very unique to see how no matter whatever it is anyone's doing, I always like to tell them, whether they like to believe it or not, that they're marketing themselves.
Yes.
Or they're marketing their company in whatever fashion they choose to do it in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's dependent on obviously what, you're comfortable with as a person, but really what it really depends on is what your product or service is. So again, if you are Q Films and you are providing video services that people are probably going to put on digital platforms, then digital is the way to go in terms of your marketing strategy. But if you are a company that makes hearing aids for seniors, digital is perhaps not the way that you're going to go, right? So maybe you're sticking to more of those traditional mediums, knowing, that section of society is still reading the physical newspapers. Whereas again, if you're a tech product that's like disruptive in, wireless headphones or something like that, your target market probably is digitally engaged. So you need to really look at what your product is, what your target audience is, and how is that target audience ingesting the information the most. So obviously for millennials and for younger people, everyone's so addicted to their phones that is mobile marketing is where every company is focusing if the millennials are your target audience, right? But that doesn't mean the traditional ways of marketing are dead either. Obviously, every city is made up of people of all different age ranges. Every product is not here to serve the younger generation. So you need to kind of keep that in mind. So for West Edmonton Mall, for example, our audience is a cross-section of the general population. So I can't have just a digital social media strategy because I need to think about who is coming into the mall. So if I'm targeting back to school fashion or back to school shopping or a campaign like that, yes, who's going back to school are students who are on their phones, but the people paying for the backpack potentially are still reading the newspaper or are the ones that are driving around. The decision maker. So you are looking at, incorporating a billboard strategy or, a print strategy of some sort in addition to the digital push. I feel like you really need to recognize A, who your target audience is, and B, how do they really take in information, and then target them at those natural touch points.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's a really great point.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when one of my favorite marketing professors said this, and it adds to what you're saying, where at the end of the day, you need to really know who your audience is. And when you're in marketing, you have to really understand who that person is and what their needs are, how you're going to meet them, and put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
So he always used to say, you're going to have a day where you're going to meet a 65-year-old who's running a business, who very much so may have a senior audience. You need to put yourself in his shoes and exactly understand how his audience and how he is going to want to receive information.
Right.
Then he's like, okay, next day you're going to meet a 35-year-old, let's say weekend warrior.
Right.
That's somebody who's running a physio clinic.
Yeah.
And now you need to put yourself in their shoes, figure out who their audience is, by one, them telling you, but two, also getting insight on, okay, well, who is this person going to want to target their physio to?
Right.
Right? And then you really get to adjust.
Right.
You have to almost show a certain side of yourself that specific person is going to be keen to liking.
Yes.
And that, a lot of what, for me, to your point, is what marketing is.
Yeah.
Where you find a way to really build a bridge and getting to know who that specific customer or that purpose is going to fuel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's pretty unique.
Agreed.
I want you to maybe share with the audience about how, with your position as a marketing manager with the West Edmonton Mall, dealing with events and promotions, what does your day-to-day look like, and what are you essentially, what are you being tracked on? Like, what is it that you feel you're check marking where you realize that, okay, you're getting the job done? Because there's something that big, and handling to this day one of the biggest malls in the world, I can't imagine how many different things you're juggling.
Yeah, no 2 days are the same, that's for sure. It's a mixed bag of everything under the sun. WEM is very unique where it's not just a retail experience. There's the attractions, so Water Park and Galaxyland being the biggest ones, and then there's a whole bunch of mini attractions, and there's also a hotel attached, so there's hospitality marketing as well. Day-to-day is very hard to explain because it really depends on, time of year, what campaigns are currently running, what's coming down the pipeline. Sometimes we're reactive, sometimes we're proactive. Again, it's a mixed bag of things because there's so much going on every day. But you know, just like everything else, you have to prioritize what's going on and what needs your immediate attention. So if, you know, the Oilers are coming into WEM for an autograph session, that kind of takes up your entire week. But at the same time, just like any other job, honestly, there's short-term projects, day-to-day projects, and then there's those long-term projects in the back. So you're dealing with everything from working with IT to make sure the website is functioning the best that it can. We have a loyalty app, trying to make sure it's, you know, the best user interface experience for the consumers. There's events going on in the mall every day in all the different venues, like the Ice Palace or the different stages. And then again, depending on the time of year, there's different kind of shopping and retail pushes that come through. So back to school's just ended. We're already planning for Black Friday and getting into holidays. So yeah, it's exciting. It's a very dynamic environment, which is great. I have a lot of different touch points, and I really like that. Before this, I was doing corporate marketing at Stantec, which was quite different. And it's B2B marketing. So obviously B2B and B2C is so different in terms of how you implement. So I think there's pros and cons to both. I feel like you need to try both out to then really figure out which one you like better. I'm kind of on the fence right now because I feel like, you know, I've done the B2B side with Stantec and now I'm doing the B2C side with WEM. As to where I land, as I said, there's kind of pros and cons to both ends. But I think B2B corporate marketing really does set a very strong foundation that you can then build on.
Yes.
You know, it is a lot more regimented and it's not as dynamic. But at the same time, it's so competitive in that space. The stakes are so much higher, even though WEM is more, you know, B2C is public facing and you kind of, everything that I do gets put out into the public. So even if I'm approving like an Instagram post or an Instagram caption, it's going out into the public and it's going to be privy to opinions almost instantaneously. Yes. So in those terms, the stakes are really high. But on the corporate side, even though it's not public and you're dealing with other business entities, financially, the stakes are extremely high in corporate marketing. So that then has its own set of repercussions, right? That has its own set of consequences. And how you manage your workload, how you go about doing a project that you're maybe involved with that is $9 million on the corporate side is very different than maybe I need to implement like a back to school campaign for WEM. So the language they speak is very different. The stakeholders they're speaking to are so different. Here, you know, on the WEM side, I'm trying to see, okay, what's a cool picture of a back to school thing that a kid's going to be excited about and tell his mom that like, I really want this. Definitely. And then on the corporate side, it's so different, right? It's like, okay, how can I help Stantec win this like proposal for a huge city park or whatever that is. So my professional experience has been very diverse, but I think that's really added to making me more well-rounded. I think if I stuck to one or the other, I would feel a little bit pigeonholed. But now I'm in a much better position to, again, take the decision on what route I want to go and what type of marketing I want to explore further. So for any students that are kind of taking marketing right now, and obviously I teach at MacEwan, that's what I tell them. I can tell you whatever, you know, from my experience, and maybe it can guide your choices, but you really need to do both of them in practice and do the two different kinds of marketing in practice. Yes. To really then decide, you know, where you think you can flourish and where you have the most value that you bring to the table. Because it picks at different aspects of your personality, right? Because different things are getting highlighted and different kind of skill sets need to come to the forefront. So yeah, I feel like you need to try both to kind of figure out where you fit.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I'm really glad you shared that because I couldn't relate. I could relate actually a lot because I used to as well think that marketing was pigeonholed in this one aspect. Yeah. But then you go out and you actually apply your marketing skills in the real world. Right. And you get to really see the difference once you felt what B2B is and what B2C is. Yeah. And I was in a very B2B formal environment, to your point, when I was working as a consultant with Post Media and Edmonton Journal. And that was an environment where it was, it was formal. It was, let's go to the business owner.
Yeah.
Let's create this needs assessment. And I got to really see what a needs assessment really is.
Yeah.
I got to apply certain questions that I needed to ask a decision maker.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, when I went to TELUS as a marketing manager, I got to see, okay, well, now I'm the Captain Fun guy. I'm going to events. I'm dealing with kids. I'm dealing with, strategically figuring out where we need to go. Where there's certain, let's say, communities in Edmonton where there's going to be fiber lit. And that was where I got to kind of show more of my own personality as opposed to being very formal. So it was really neat to see the difference between both, and then seeing, okay, well, which one do I want to ultimately stick with? Right?
And it's good to do that early on in your career if you can. And I think like internships, for example, are a great way to kind of get a taste of different industries. And this is not to say, again, B2B and B2C are very kind of generalized two pathways that you can take in marketing. But even within those, there is different levels of that you can experience. So if you're doing B2C, for example, you can be anything from like overarchingly in charge of a whole bunch of different things to the public, or just social media by itself, right? So you can do social media marketing, or you can do digital by itself, where you're just dealing with website app deployment, or you can do events marketing. So all these things are all public facing, but again, even within B2C, they're different touch points and different access points to the public. So I feel like for all students, I think internships are really, really important. And that's how I kind of figured out where, the value that I bring to the table was through doing internships throughout those summer months, whether I was going to Thailand one summer, then, the very next summer I was doing an internship with the province of Alberta. So it's not as exciting as Thailand was, but I think it was really important to get that taste of that corporate business environment, and really, really figuring out what the day-to-day looks like instead of just what the idea of it is or hearing it from somebody else. Yeah.
Is there a way you can maybe share with us a specific campaign, whether it's through what you've done with your work at West Edmonton Mall or something you've done in the past that to this day you'll never forget? It was exciting. It was an ability for you to take in your own experiences and personality to ultimately have a very successful campaign come out of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about a consumer-facing campaign, then for sure I can refer to like a WEM campaign. So we just did the WEM fashion show earlier this year, and Sarah Jessica Parker's brand actually just signed on with 555, which is the parent company of West Edmonton Mall. So she's opening stores at all three of the 555 properties. So WEM being one of them in Edmonton, then Mall of America and American Dream in New Jersey.
The store looks amazing, by the way.
Yeah, it does, hey? Should I take credit?
Exactly.
Thanks.
I know two people sitting
Kenny.
beside me who were a part of it.
Yes, yes. So yeah, that was a really cool campaign. Again, obviously, thanks to, the corporate affiliation that happened. I was just told one day that, this is not going to be like our regular annual fashion shows that we do. We have Sarah Jessica Parker coming. So that completely changed the ball game of how we treated it, realizing that this is an opportunity for us to really elevate the game. If there's any time that you're given an opportunity on a platter for WEM, this would be it. There's a huge fashion icon coming to open her own store and has agreed to be a part of the WEM fashion show. So that was a really successful campaign. Obviously, I mean, in terms of the buzz and things, we didn't have to do too much. It was, again, I really focused on large-scale strategy and large-scale deployment. So a lot of the times, again, depending on what your product is or what your messaging is, either you do macro level, micro level, or a combination of both. So for Sarah Jessica, I completely axed the micro level marketing, and it was all macro. So I was like, okay, I need billboards on Calgary Trail. I need billboards at the airport. We just need to get the word out that she's coming, and I know the rest will just follow. And that, again, with any kind of a celebrity involved, the marketing, again, looks very different, right? So, again, focusing on those macro level things, knowing that a lot of the fashion enthusiasts and bloggers and things like that are all on Instagram. So we had a very strong, again, Instagram campaign promoting the event. And then obviously within WEM, because we get so much foot traffic, we made sure that it was very visible that this event was happening and she was coming. And so it was very based on just exposure and amplifying what was already happening. And it worked, right? So we had our tickets sell out like within the first half an hour that we put them out, and we doubled our numbers. Usually the fashion show seats about 350 people on the Ice Palace, and this time we had close to 650 or 700. Wow. Again, just amping up the game, the kind of coverage that we had. Usually we'd have internal people, cover for photo and video. Obviously I reached out to Q Films, and we had multiple videographers, multiple photographers covering the event. So it really just gave us a chance to elevate the game. And again, it's like capitalizing on those opportunities. We could have just, added her in and run the show like we do every year, which again, every year it is great. But we were like, you know what, this is an opportunity for us to really take it to the next level and make a bigger splash. Reaching out to media. So usually we just kind of send out a press release, and whatever media is interested will, write in and say, hey, we want to attend your fashion show, and they do coverage on it. But this time we reached out to our partners at Bell, at Rogers Media, proactively letting them know, hey, this is, an exclusive event. We would love for you to come cover. We had journalists that had flew down from Toronto and Vancouver because of the press release as well. So really, again, amplifying that message on that macro level as much as possible, because we were dealing with now a macro level celebrity. So the campaign and the strategy all really changed depending on what we were dealing with. And then I would say a campaign, it wasn't a campaign obviously because I was with Stantec for this one, but it was, I mentioned the $9 million before, but I worked on a bid that was worth $9 million. Wow. And so the age that I did it at, and the fact that, my client group internally and my managers at Stantec trusted me with that project was a great kind of success. And I talk about it in every interview and every chance I get, because it is a moment of pride that, I had anything to contribute to winning that kind of work for the company that I was working for. So yeah, I feel like on the corporate side, that one, and then on the consumer side, the SJP one.
I find that amazing how that really is what marketing also is represented as, is how big do you want to make something?
Yeah.
When you have someone such as Sarah Jessica Parker, is your mentality, oh, you know what? With her name slapped on one ad, it will do just fine. But instead you're like, no, okay, even though her name is big, let's continue to pump this out. Let's get excited about it.
Take it to the next level.
Right.
Yeah, let's make this double what we're already used to, because we are able to utilize her name and her reputation.
Yeah.
And then let's recognize that this can be bigger than what we want it to be, so long as we're all willing.
And then long-term effects, right? Not just thinking about, okay, pre-event and during event, how are we going to make it amazing, but really post-event, how are you continuing to leverage this really cool thing that we were able to bring to Edmonton, and, turn it into long-term gains for them all.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. Good for you for doing all that. Wow.
Well, I didn't bring her in personally, Kenny, but
you're affiliated.
Yes, it was a cool project to be a part of, for sure.
I'm just picturing you just giving her a call, being like, "Hey, what's up, girl? I mean, thanks for liking my pick on Mannat Mode. You ready to come by?"
Yeah, right. I have some samples to send you.
Yeah.
No, she was amazing, and again, dealing with a lot of these, a lot of this talent too. So WEM also does sound waves. And really seeing the difference between, these young DJs who are trying to make it into the world versus someone like Sarah Jessica Parker, who is so well known, and seeing the way they function, and seeing really how impactful the way you conduct yourself can be to somebody else. And that's really something, even the 3 hours that I got with SJP that day, it really made a big impact on me. She was so kind, she was so humble, and so sweet, and she really can throw her weight around if she wants, but she really doesn't, and she's so genuine. She asks people their story. It's not all about her, and I feel like just seeing someone in power conducting themselves that way and really just spreading positivity and kindness, that was really amazing to see. And just to see, not that I would ever get to her level, but even in my little way, around even your personal network, how far positivity can take you, how far being humble can take you, and you never know who is in what stage of life and what they're taking in from your behavior or from your communication. So really being conscious and conducting yourself in a way that can have a positive impact or even put a smile on someone's face, I think that goes a long way.
And I remember you just we had this discussion a while back, where you had an experience with another, client. I'm not going to mention who, but the difference between her and SJP, the attitude and kind of how the process went.
Right.
Like you said, it has a big impact, right?
Yeah.
She could, like you said, could throw her weight around. She could say, I want this, this, or whatever the case.
Yeah.
And then you met her and you had a chance to speak with her, and then seeing that, she's treating you as another human being.
Yeah.
Instead of just another kind of pawn in the whole mix of the whole business side of things.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's a very, again, overarching macro level thing. It's not like, we're interacting with celebrities on the daily basis, or that we're celebrities ourselves, that we need to watch how we operate. But I really think you can inculcate that in your regular life. And you never know when a friend is going through a hard day and they haven't spoken to you about it, but just, having coffee with you, what energy are you bringing to the table? What energy are you bringing into their sphere? And I'm very sensitive to energies now. And I feel like the vibes that I get from people really dictate how much I'm going to interact with that person. You have to treat your own mind as a very sacred place, I feel like, because everything that you take in is going to have an effect on you, and that is then going to affect your choices and your decisions. Your choices and your decisions are then ultimately going to decide what kind of life you have. So I treat that with a lot of respect and a lot of, again, conscious sensitivity on what I'm letting my mind think, on what I'm letting my mind get influenced by. And so if you have people in your life that, are pulling you down, or not making you feel so great about yourself, or that you recognize as toxic, you need to shed those people. And I think that was one of the best decisions I've made, probably, going through my mid-20s. And I think moving to San Francisco had a lot to do with it. Just seeing who's really making the effort to keep in touch with you. When I come back into town and I'm only in town for 4 days, who's you know what? You don't need to come make time for me. I'm just going to come crash at your parents. Let's hang out. I just want to see you. Right? And not really, instead of dwelling on the people that didn't make the effort, focus your energies on the people that did, and see what a positive impact that has on you. Because you'll be much more positive and much more grateful. Grateful yourself for the people that are in your life. So I try to really conduct myself in a way where every interaction I'm having, you should always leave it positive, and you should always bring in great, happy, encouraging energy. And my friends have commented on it. They notice, when we're around you, you're kind of, I was really having a bad day, but you really changed that around 2 months ago. And I was like, what? Why didn't you tell me back then that this was going on? And they're like, well, we didn't want to talk about it at that point, but you were just so positive. And yeah, so you just never know what backstory people are coming in with when you're interacting with them, or what kind of day they're having, again, what kind of problems people have in their lives. So I feel like if you just focus on being positive and bring that, and if that's what you bring to the table, then you never know whose life you're touching. And I for sure have people in my life that do that for me, so I try to kind of conduct myself that way as well. Yeah.
No wonder why Swindios has such a happy face on his face, He's got a keeper right here. That was a quick shout out for behind the scenes. But exactly, to your point, Mannat, when you take the time to focus on what you do have, who you do have who's willing to reach out, especially when you're in or out of town for a certain moment, and obviously that individual knows it. It's being able to understand that there's people or certain things that we're drawn to in our life that ultimately make us that positive. Yeah. And then even to your point about your friends sharing it a couple months later, I felt like maybe as the months went on, they needed to realize that, wow, now that they've seen you, they realize how much better their mindset was just after you blessed them with that type of mindset.
Yeah, or they've had the time to process whatever difficult thing was going through, they were going through, and then had time to reflect, right? So, I just find energies and vibes, and if you pay attention to that stuff, it's very easy to tell who's in your life for what reason.
Yes.
And so just being conscious of it, right? Just being conscious of it and realizing that it's going to have an effect on you. It's going to have an effect on your mood, how proactive you're going to be about things in your life, and how you're going to conduct yourself, right? Definitely. If you're dealing with something that you're like, I'm not happy with that person, but you don't want to say it out loud, so subconsciously it's there. And then your next interaction isn't so great because there's that undercurrent still playing through. And then you're not happy with this, with that interaction. Then you're not happy with the relationship. It just,
unresolved
negativity will lead to negativity, and positivity will attract just that. So,
True. It's exactly why I see why you're so successful at being able to juggle everything that you're doing and being able to have the relationship you have with your parents and with your husband, right? Because everyone's trying to figure that out. They're all trying to figure out that balance.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have us conclude on our last topic here about how you're somebody who essentially is defying the odds of even being a professor without the, let's say, once upon a time credentials you would need, where a lot of times, to your point before we went on air here, is how once upon a time to be a professor, you kind of needed the PhD, you needed to have years of academic experience. But you yourself mentioned how a university here in our city reached out to you and said, listen, we see amazing things you're doing in the marketing space. We'd love for you to share this as a professor to our students. And I kind of want to know, based off of your experience so far as a professor, what are some of the things that you find that you're doing that is quite unique and different from the lens of being a professor, and that you believe needs to be addressed to the students, so that way they take those as tokens of learning experiences during the process of school and once they graduate afterwards?
I am quite young for a professor. I started teaching 4 years ago. So I've been teaching at MacEwan part-time since then. My dad used to teach at innate. So academia was kind of always in the mix. Again, if you have somebody who, does something, there is a bit of familiarity in that space. And I was already working with Stantec when MacEwan came to me with the opportunity. So again, not making sure that I'm not boxed or labeled just doing one thing. That was the reason I took up the opportunity, just making sure that, just because I have, in my mid-20s, this cool corporate job and from the outside, this path that is probably going to lead to success, to continue your own development, right? So I took up the opportunity. And MacEwan and other universities in general are really starting to change their approach towards education as well. So as you said, I don't have a PhD, I do have a master's, but they really want to bring in industry professionals into the classroom. And they want students to be interacting with professors who have worked in the workplace, who have really experienced some of these diverse things that the students in the classroom are inspired by. And they want to create that aspirational, tangible work culture that someone can relate to, instead of just having, professors, again, who have years and years of experience and have their multiple PhDs and things like that. I do think there's value in that as well. And, every faculty, for sure, around the world has a mix of people who are industry experts, and then your profs, right? The PhD profs. Where I feel like I really add value to my students' experience is, again, sharing those experiences of the workplace. So instead of teaching them just concepts out of the textbook that's talking about corporate marketing, I'm able to speak to how corporate marketing is and what the day-to-day can potentially look like. What are the different avenues? Same with B2C marketing. If you're giving an example of how to run a successful marketing campaign versus just the case study that's in the textbook, the impact that it makes is very different. And I find when I just stick to kind of the textbook definition of things and I'm just trying to run through the material, the engagement level of the students is very different as compared to if I'm telling a story about something I did at WEM, because that's something that they can relate to. Or there's some students in class who want that job, who want to be able to work on campaigns like that. So then their questions and their interactions with me during discussions in the class become a lot more authentic, and they're a lot more engaged and interested.
There's a higher level of respect coming from them because they realize that you've lived it and it's coming from your own experience and you're going to share it with them.
Right? So I feel like that really does help. And even when I was doing my master's, a lot of it, a lot of the profs that I had, again, were these industry experts. So we had, marketing profs that worked in the tech industry, that worked in banking, that worked in consumer-facing brands, and really getting tidbits of what's their actual job like. Like, I know we need to run through all this coursework, but I was like, I would sit in class and really look forward to their stories, their work stories, their project successes, their project failures, how they dealt with everything. So I felt like if as a student, that's what interested me, that's what I really try to bring in the classroom then, is talk about those real life things that I think students will really engage with in a much more meaningful manner. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't late to the party. I would have went on my, what do you call it, my MacEwan system. And I want Professor Mannat for sure. Awesome. Because honestly, I love the professors that are willing to be a little bit more real.
Yes.
And they share that experience. So I bet you your students just, they're all over you.
I don't know. I'm too scared to go on Rate My Prof, but...
You don't even choose to go on.
Yeah, I've never looked at it. I'm scared to see what's on there. But yeah, I for sure get tons of students, who after class will add me on LinkedIn, and even to this day will message me and be like, hey, I have an interview. I remember you mentioning this, where should I prep or what should I do? So I think they really see it as an opportunity where I am a lot more accessible. And I really understand their situation. I mean, when you have a major declared, you're kind of like, I'll take any job in marketing, right? And then you start applying and you're like, whoa, there's all these different kinds, and where do I go? And so I feel like having those real conversations, and I always find between breaks or right after class, I'll have a bit of a lineup for people who want to ask about the real life stories that I've told in class, and something different resonates with everybody. But they're a lot more engaged, I find.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to your point about that, when once a marketing major student goes out and applies and they see all these amazing opportunities in marketing and all these more options that they would have even, they wouldn't have even imagined there to be.
Right.
They see someone like yourself who's had all that experience, who currently is doing multiple different things that you enjoy doing in marketing, for them to believe that they can combine their passion with their career in marketing if they so choose.
Or, keep them separate. That's not a problem either. So that's what I really find, when in the beginning of the class, I always start my class with, obviously, name, major, but what's your dream job? What's your passion? And even the semester that I just started right now, last week, students are saying, well, for a job, I think I want this, but I love that. And it's two completely disjointed things. And they kind of almost speak like they know that they need to choose one. Yeah. So it's really from, class one, trying to say, you don't need to choose, you don't need to be labeled, you don't need to be boxed. You can do 5 different things if you want to do 5 different things. Just because you have a 9 to 5 doesn't mean you can't do something else in the weekend, can't work on something else on the side on the weekends. You guys have other jobs, you're doing this out of your passion. So it's really giving them examples, again, of real life local people. This is not far-fetched people living in LA and New York, and only those people get to live their dreams, right? It doesn't matter where you are physically. It's really up to you and how proactive you want to be and what you want to fill your day with. So if you're really passionate about bikes, go ahead, design bikes and do all of that. But you could be working in, corporate marketing at the same time. And you know what? You can still have a tattoo parlor on the side too if you want. And it's that's what I find. Students have all these different individual trajectories, and they're kind of well, and then I'll pick the safe option out of that. And then, the passion is what it is kind of thing. And it's no, don't give up on that. You can be multiple things, and you can do all the things that you want to do. Yeah. You don't have to pick one or the other. So
wow,
that's
a really good point.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, what class specifically are you teaching in marketing right now?
So I teach an array of classes. This semester I'm teaching international marketing. It's a 400 level elective. I think it's 403. But I've taught, everything from introduction to marketing, to integrated marketing, to digital marketing. So it really depends on obviously what the need of the hour is, and they keep kind of changing the electives that they bring about as well. Yeah. So, but this semester it's international marketing.
Out of my own vested curiosity, anyone else out there who sees you as a professor at such a young age, is the base mandatory prerequisite to get a master's, or could it be an MBA? Could it be a post-grad degree in order for, let's say, MacEwan University to accept someone to come in as a professor?
Honestly, when they bring in industry experts, there really isn't a base mark. Okay. So your experience can speak as loudly about your credentials and the reason of them hiring you as much as your degrees can. So I know profs that actually only have an undergrad, but then they have like 20 years of experience in a specific niche field, and they get invited to be guest lecturers or, you know, guest professors as well. So I don't think the benchmark really should be, I need to have this degree or I need to have X amount of years. It's really more about your profile as a whole. So you need to have your niche that you're really good at. And if you're really good at that, they'll see value in bringing you in and how you can provide instruction or, you know, provide any kind of an inspiration to the students. I would say, you know, if you want to do regular teaching at MacEwan and want to be a sessional instructor, obviously it's a bit more structured. So for that, for sure, like a master's or an MBA would be base level of what you need to have for them to even entertain you to be kind of a you know, long-term faculty. But yeah, I feel like it's not so much about the paper degrees and that kind of stuff anymore. It's really what you bring to the table. And even in my classes, like I really try to have a lot of guest speakers come in and speak about the different areas that they're specialized in relating to the course material that I'm teaching. So yeah, I feel like there's no like base level. I mean, if your end goal as, you know, a professional already is to be a professor, then the PhD is the right way to go. I didn't pursue my PhD because I have all these other interests and I didn't think that I wanted to teach full time. So I didn't go that route, and I was lucky enough to get an opportunity with just having a master's and the experience that I do have. But yeah, if you know you want to be a prof and that's what you want to do long term, then I would say, you know, a PhD is worth the investment.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
Like right now, your life right now, it's like what I'm idolizing in the future. Like I want to be Mannat.
Oh God. It's all, awesome. You know, every day is not the same, and it's not all easy running, and there's bumps along the way, and there's always stories and things that kind of build you up. And it's not about, as they say, you know, it's not about getting knocked down. It's really getting back up after you get knocked down. So it's, you know, if your company's running in debt for months and months and months, it's about, okay, you know what, one last try. If it doesn't work this time, okay, maybe then I'll rethink this plan, and then I'll rethink. And you just never know when that last try can lead to so many other things. So it's for sure not all peaches and cream and sunshine and rainbows. There's a lot of hard work, dedication, a lot of giving up of personal time, and really, you know, filling up your evenings and weekends with these professional pursuits. And, you know, being married, trying to balance my family, my in-laws, obviously wanting to give time to my friends and have a social life and continue staying a well-rounded individual. It takes a lot, but I'm used to kind of hustling all the time, but I have a wonderful husband who, you know, makes sure that we get our time out, and he slows down the pace when we do need to slow down. So that's great, you know, making time for travel, or if you can't, you know, go away to Europe next month, maybe you can go away to the mountains. It's you know, finding those little sweet escapes. Yeah, exactly. I think for me, again, everything that I do and my entire decision making or anything that I invest my time into is to cultivate a life that I'm proud of. So whether that's the people in your life, whether it's what you're doing work-wise, to me, it's to continue to stay inspired. I get that, you know, again, we don't have the reach that a celebrity would have or the impact that you could have on millions of people. But even if I can impact the people in my personal network to live a life that's inspired and positive, that's really all I'm going for. And more than anything, you have to do it for yourself. right? For the person that you are. I feel like if you yourself feel like you're an inspired, fulfilled individual who pushes themselves and is living the best life that they possibly can in that moment, that then resonates to everything else that you're doing. So for me, it's continue to stay inspired. Don't give up. Don't get boxed. Don't get labeled. Again, ever since I moved to this country, that's something that became very important to me at a young age, to not be labeled and not be boxed. First, it was the girl that came from India. Then it was, okay, the girl that maybe does just this, or the girl that does marketing. It's really constantly continuing to push myself. And maybe in the beginning, I started out as, trying to prove a point or trying to tell people that, I'm not who you think I am. And now it's really just about myself. How much can I keep pushing my own threshold and, going to bed every night and just being proud of the day that I've had. So that's what it's about for me.
Continue to do what you're doing, and it is an absolute blessing to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Second Floor podcast. This episode was actually brought to you by luxmarket.com. If you feel like you enjoyed this episode, please go on iTunes Podcast, give us a review, let us know what you think, and feel free to share this with a friend who you also believe would enjoy the episode.